Well, hello and good morning. My name's Kieron Seamons. This is my inky world, and we are getting into some thoughts of past cartoons and cartoon shows that I've worked on. And today kind of brings me back to the days when I worked in Germany and in Berlin, in fact. So I'm going to kind of go into some of those shows that we worked on back in the days in Germany. It's going to be a little bit of a struggle today because last night was a very difficult night to sleep. My second brain and my first brain were kind of having some kind of discussion about life, and they wouldn't let me sleep. So if I fall asleep in the middle of this drawing, definitely not. Right, so we're going to get on with some drawing today. So if you've got a cartoon that you would love to do a drawing of yourself, you can sit down with a piece of paper and do a drawing of your favourite cartoon while I chat away. So, let's get on. Let's go back to Germany. So, we are back. And we are back in the time of around 1990. Just after all the big kind of the Disney studios and the Amblin studios and all of those big American companies kind of crashed in the UK, and they sent a set of destruction through the industry almost. It's like it was very, very difficult after that period of time to get any work for the very simple reason that they had hired hundreds of people. Especially towards the end. I mean, at the beginning they were very, very fussy, and they'd have interviews with people and say, well, you're not good enough, goodbye, you're not good enough, goodbye. But towards the end they basically needed a lot of people, especially on Roger Rabbit and stuff like that. There was a lot of things that were going on, and when the American companies came over later on for some of the big Amblimation projects, they basically hired up so many people to finish off the movies, and it got a little bit ridiculous. So there were so many people flooding the market that probably would have never have been accepted before. But in the later years, they basically desperately had to finish their movies, which had this huge flood of people onto the market. Excuse me while I remind myself what the character looks like. It was 1990, so it's a very long time ago. So, the character in today's subject is Benjamin BLUMCHEN, who is not really well known anywhere else except Germany and that kind of German area. Maybe Sweden and stuff like that. Maybe he's also very popular, but and it was this kind of blue elephant character. So after the crash of all the American studios, there was a lot of work being. Well, England basically collapsed. Basically, I mean, it was absolutely dreadful. It was almost impossible to get work. It was just dreadful. It was a dreadful, 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 dreadful time, and. So, a lot of people had this option that there was the movie Asterix was going on in Berlin, and a lot of people were heading out. Obviously, got the call up from being one of the Disney people and being one of those type of artists. There was a lot of people being called up to go to Germany, and basically, people didn't really have much choice because there was no work, nothing. It was dead, you know. In fact, it had almost got to the this the state that if you walked into a company to say, well, actually, I worked at Disney, you know, they would go, oh God, not another one. So it was a very, very, very tough time for people. And very unpleasant too. You spend your life trying to be kind of above the cut, as it were, to be kind of slumped in with everything. Was quite tough. Well, that should do. So, off I went to Germany. I was basically, after Disney's, I got the so-called invite to go to Germany and to a company called Hanho, run by a German guy called Gerhard Hahn, a very tall guy with like a grey afro and glasses, quite an eccentric character. And a lot of people went there to work on Asterix, which was the movie at the time. And when I arrived, I actually got pulled into to work with the director. What was the guy's name? Knudsen? And I became kind of his assistant. And so I ended up working on a character called Benjamin BLUMCHEN. Now there's a funny twist to Benjamin. When we first got there in Germany, we were all kind of broke. Nobody had any money. Nothing. We were all going there in desperation, really, trying to follow the next gig. And we arrived, and I got pulled over to do, firstly it was Benjamin BLUMCHEN, and then I went on to do B.B. Blocksberg. And I think later on in the years, I think they actually did a show with Benjamin BLUMCHEN and B.B. Blocksberg in the same kind of TV show. But little did we know really about how popular this character was. When we got there, we were all kind of broke, and I remember us all going out. I mean, we were young men, you know. We all went out to some kind of nightclub, and you know, we were kind of like struggling to even pay for the beer back then, and we kind of, you know, we were obviously trying to chat up the local girls and whatever such, as you do. And we weren't having much luck, obviously. And obviously one of the guys started talking with some girl. And they were kind of a little bit curious about what we were doing in Berlin. And well, you know, it was kind of like, oh God, you know, we're working on this blue elephant, you know, it's like, do we really want to say, you know, it's like, and it was kind of like, well, we're working on a cartoon show. It's like, what is it now? We would only really just arrived, you know. And I remember us kind of saying, well, it's this kind of, well, it's a big blue elephant, you know, it's a big blue elephant with a red hat. Benjamin? We were like, yeah, he's called Benjamin. And then suddenly we were like superstars. It was like, can we buy you a beer? Can we buy you, you know, it's like, oh my God, it switched in seconds how popular everything was. The simple fact that we were working on some kind of German superstar and everybody was buying us drinks, and it was all quite remarkable, you know. And suddenly this character called Benjamin BLUMCHEN had a new lease of life. It was quite incredible, and we'd never heard of him. But obviously the Germans had grown up with Benjamin and had hundreds and hundreds of episodes of Benjamin BLUMCHEN. So it turned into be quite a adventure, really, because I became the kind of assistant director or whatever it was at the time. Where I wasn't really into labels at the time, but I was kind of like the assistant of this director. He was an American director, and I think he was from Connecticut, if I remember correctly. And I spent my time working on this superstar. Yeah, so I worked on Benjamin BLUMCHEN, who is this character that I am drawing right at this moment. And I don't know, there was this strange director who was talking about I can't remember how many wives he had, but they'd all died mysteriously, falling out of balconies and such. And I mean, you know, probably in these modern days, he probably would have been suspect number one, probably, but it was a lovely period of time. Very, 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 very cold, you know. And he's got these strange kind of wrinkles in his ears, and wrinkles on his nose, and wrinkles on his forehead. He was a very wrinkly kind of character, although he was supposed to be quite a young chap. The elephant, not the director. And so that was what happened. And we used to walk to work. We used to walk through this long market, which was fantastic. It was a beautiful market. Obviously, we didn't have any money, so we couldn't buy anything, except we just happened to have enough for some hot wine. So we used to go to all these kind of stalls where they would dish up glasses of hot wine. And I remember getting to work many a time with my beard being frozen and having ice on the edges of my beard. But I remember quite early on we arrived, and I flew out on my own. I was in quite desperation at the time. And I even had to borrow money to go to get the flight ticket. I sold my absolutely beautiful EKO guitar. It was black, and I don't really like black guitars. I always feel like they're hiding something under the paint, you know. But I had bought this amazing black EKO guitar, and it was absolutely gorgeous. I really loved it, but of course I had to sell it as part of the raising of funds to go to Germany and start a new life. And my sister's boyfriend at the time loaned me some money to buy my ticket, and off I went, dropped everything that I had here and basically went with a small bag, as I did with many places, up until kind of getting married and having kids. I would always have a shoulder bag and a handbag, basically a kind of small suitcase type thing, and that was always what I did. When I started to play the mandolin, I would basically replace the shoulder bag with a mandolin and a suitcase bag, and that was a very, very, very simple traveling. So everywhere I went, even when I went to China the first time, packed up my life and went to China, I went with one small bag and a mandolin. That was it, nothing else. I remember getting to the airport, and then the people that met me at the airport were kind of like, "Oh, sir, let me get your bags." I was like, "Oh, I've already got them." And they were absolutely in shock that I turned up with a very small suitcase and a mandolin, which really was my whole life at the time. And so in Germany, I turned up at the studio, and it was a kind of a very strange setup, really, because the studio was in the West, Hanho Studios, and the living apartments were in the East, which was a very, 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 very different situation. And I remember first getting there and traveling to Kleist Park, if I'm correct, Kleist Park, which is where my apartment was to be. And now I remember kind of, I think it was a tram, the transport there at the time, with these trams, and I took the tram across the city and down to find Kleist Park. And the strange thing was that it was kind of like you're in the West and everything is very, very nice and very, very normal-ish, kind of quite run down at the time, but still quite normal. And then you went to the East, which was kind of like you get off the train and suddenly you are in a black and white movie, and you've gone back like 100 years or something. It was just like, I can't explain it. Everything was grey. Buildings were grey. The people were grey. The sky was grey. And it was really a shock to the system. And obviously, you know, like when I went to China there, I'm met at the airport, and people take your bags for you, and people take you to your apartment, and you're very well looked after. But back in those days, it was kind of like you're just a little artist, you know. And I remember kind of getting a key and a piece of paper with the address on it. It was kind of like, yeah, go and find your apartment, you little scumbag. And off I went to Kleist Park. And I remember walking over this long bridge, very wide bridge, and just kind of feeling like I'd gone back 100 years or something, where everything was very grey and very, very kind of gloomy almost. And I almost kind of felt like I was in an old war movie or something, you know. And I go to this apartment, eventually find it, after kind of struggling to get myself across and find directions from people that were not interested in any way to talk to me. Understandably, because I probably looked quite odd back in those days. In those days. I think I look probably odder now. I found the apartment, and I went into this apartment, and key and a piece of paper kind of going up, matching, found it, opened the door, and I opened this door rather I mean, it was a big front door. And I opened to this mansion apartment. And at first I kind of walked in, and very high ceilings and huge rooms. And even the bathroom, the bathroom was like as big as my apartment in London, It was this giant white tiled bathroom, and it was just incredible. And there were lots of stories about where all these apartments had come from and why they were all left on the hill type of thing. But it was an incredible, large, very cold apartment. And I felt quite strange going to the bathroom, because it was kind of like this huge white tiled room, and it was very strange, very strange. And had a huge living room that overlooked this river, and a very strange period of time. That's really the best way to explain it. It was a very strange feeling coming from London to Berlin, and almost kind of going back in time. Now, there was a lot of people that came over. There was a lot of Irish that came over, and I remember one of my later apartments was doesn't matter. But I remember when I first got there, we all went out for drinks to kind of get used to everything and say hello to lots of people and meet up with people. And I remember leaving and getting lost, and it was snowing, and it was very cold, and I was starting to get very worried. And I struggled that night. I really struggled. I was getting extremely worried, and I was really beginning to panic, until I found, luckily I had walked in a full circle, and I'd found the bar, which had this huge stag's head on the front. And I found the bar, and it kind of got me back on track to getting home safe. But what happened was, when we went into work the next morning, one of the guys had done exactly what I had done. I had got lost, but had stopped, and obviously being a little bit drunk from the time in the bar, and had sat down on a bench and froze to death. And that was a real wake-up call for everybody. And it so easily could have happened to me. Very sad. So my time was spent working on Benjamin, who was this character, and a very popular character. He was an extremely popular character, and it wasn't too bad. It wasn't a difficult show to work on. It was quite an easy show, and same with B.B. Blocksberg, was also very popular. I think they'd even done live action versions of B.B. So extremely popular. And so I did that for however long. And when I went back to England, We paid all our taxes and everything out there and went back to England. And then when I got back to England, I didn't have the right forms or whatever, and I had to pay all my tax again. So the English had taken all the money that I'd earned. So I'd kind of gone to Germany for nothing. I went to Germany to work on lots of cartoon shows and very, very popular TV shows, and then going back to England after being out there for so long, only to have kind of walk into England with a little bit of money in my hand for the government to say thank you very much, and I returned as broke as I left. So lots of lessons for that period of time. I would love to tell you more about Benjamin. I don't really remember too much about Benjamin. Although I do remember very much that he was always up kind of walking quite proud on two legs. And then now and again he would just kind of get down onto four legs. So it was a strange thing between him being a real life elephant and being a kind of human type elephant. But it wasn't the first time of working on German cartoon shows. One of my first ever cartoons that I worked on was called Bessie und Bingo. Bessie und Bingo, and it was right at the beginning. I was just starting out to work in cartoons, trying to find work. I was very, very young. I was like probably just turned 17, and I was walking around London with the two big suitcases of drawings to show everybody. And I'd gone to this studio. The studio was called Tomcat, and they weren't very good at paying, but it was my first challenge. And I remember starting off going to this small studio, trying to find work. And in those days, you could kind of knock on the door and say, "Hi, I'm a genius. Do you want to hire me?" You know. Whereas these days, it's all kind of very official, and so you could kind of like turn up. And I remember turning up. And meeting this wonderful lady called Bridget, and she was being very pleasant and very kind and very kind of like positive, like, yes, we often have work and we often need young people, so keep calling back and we'll find you some work. And I was like, right. So obviously, I was a very young and very eager young man. So I must have called poor Bridget maybe 1,000 times, Like every 5 minutes I called and say, "Have you got any work yet? Have you got any work? I can do anything. I can." And in the end, I think I actually got the job, not from my talent, but from the simple reason that she was sick to death of hearing from me, calling every 5 minutes. That's that guy Kieron again. Oh, God. Kieron. And she still remains a good friend now. However many hundreds of years later it is. And it was a very, very strange time because this Bessie and Bingo. I started off, I would partly do the voice track, so I'd have to go through, and in those days you had a strip of film and you would kind of move it through and you go like that, and you'd write down all the phonetics for the mouth, and I used to do that with a little chalk pencil, little wax pencil, and I'd write down O shape and M shapes, and then the animators then would break that track down onto X sheets, these long sheets that would tell you what to do, when to do on drawings. And that was one of one of my first drawings. But I remember at the beginning coming to the studio, there's a lovely guy there called Andy Heraclius, a Greek kind of man. And I remember he was kind enough to take the time to say, this kind of couple of suitcases you have you ever seen it move? Because back in those days you couldn't just film it with your phone. I mean, it was like thousands and thousands of pounds worth of cameras back in those days. So he was extremely patient and extremely kind. Thank you very much, Andy, for this. To this day it still means a lot. And I saw my first ever scenes of animation. And, you know, as a child, you kind of like, you do 100 drawings and you think, wow, I'm a genius. You know. And then Andy would put all this stuff under the camera, and then we would watch the scenes go bloop. What was that? That's your animation. What? But it's like 100 drawings, and it's like, yep, well, that's it. And it really was an amazing kind of lesson for me on the whole production of animation, and it also just kind of added to the fuel of my addiction for this word animation. I was addicted from a very, very, very early age. I remember my dad getting some kind of Super 8 Moviola type cine camera, and getting a machine that I could kind of run it back and forward, and watch all the Charlie Chaplin going blop 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 blop. And that just fueled again the addiction of animation, and this idea that drawings could come alive, you know, and it stuck with me for many years. In fact, I was probably obsessed with animation up until the point when my company closed, which was back in about, I don't know, early 2000. But I know early 2000, 2016, I believe, 2017. That was quite a difficult loss, as much as people feel loss for people. I lost my company, and that was very painful, very, very painful. Terrible. I'd dreamed of having a studio for all of my childhood. Benjamin, BANJAMIN. Of course it is. And to lose it was a great loss. And it also kind of killed a little bit of the desire for animation and putting up with producers and such. It became so much of a kind of around a big table and everybody making decisions, and it became less of an art field and more of a producer's world, and it was quite horrible. But for me, animation was the most beautiful creation, the most amazing subject ever. It was an absolute dream, and so was my company. and so has all of the projects that I've ever worked on. They have been a very big kind of like, you know, a photo album of my life in a way. I kind of can kind of go through my life and kind of say, well, you know, well, what year was that? Well, that was before Dennis the Menace. But was it before, you know, the Cramp twins? Or, and I kind of, even to this day, I kind of still work out time scales by which cartoon was which, you know. So I worked in Tomcat for quite a few years and met lovely people like Bridget. And it started my career. And without people like Bridget being kind, I wouldn't be here probably. I'd still probably be walking around London with 2 suitcases of drawings. I mean, now you can kind of put things on a hard drive or something. But back in those days, it was kind of like having a camera was a luxury. It was like only the big companies would have cameras, you know. And a very kind man called Andy filming them for the first time ever was really, I went home and my head was spinning, and I'd kind of like overdosed almost with the excitement of animation and the possibilities of paper and pencils and pens and cameras. And you know, I went home kind of promising myself that I would save up and get myself a stop motion camera that has a, there was no such thing except for Super 8, which I did try, and I do have some very old tests. So that is my story of Benjamin Blümchen. The only addition to the Benjamin Blümchen was that I was actually in Germany, still working on the show when the voice of Benjamin died. And the same girls that thought we were superheroes were crying in nightclubs. It was a huge thing back way before internets and stuff like that. And the idea that Benjamin Blümchen had died. And that was just before we kind of finished up where we were working, and that was the end of being in Germany. But I do remember going through that period of time when his voice, the voice of Benjamin Blümchen, had died, and that was really quite a dramatic time in those days. But wonderful days, wonderful memories. And I met some wonderful people, as you do through your life. You met some incredible people. And thanks to people like Bridget, I'm still here. And thank you very much for listening to my long elaborate waffles as I draw Benjamin Blümchen, the superstar blue elephant in Germany. So thank you very much for being here. Thank you for watching. And I will see you again tomorrow for some more drawings and some more rambles. If you haven't subscribed, please do. I would love to have you on board. I would love to have you as part of our kind of watching team. And thank you very much, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.